The transport truck rumbled across the desert terrain, kicking up clouds of dust that painted everything in shades of brown and beige. Sergeant Elena Rodriguez pressed her back against the metal bench, one hand instinctively protecting the rifle case beside her. The purple paint job had drawn stares and snickers from the moment she'd stepped onto base, but she kept her expression neutral, eyes fixed on the horizon visible through the truck's open tailgate. "Hey, new girl," called out Corporal Jake Morrison from across the truck bed. His voice carried that particular brand of military skepticism she'd heard a dozen times before. "What's with the Barbie gun?" Elena didn't turn to look at him. She'd learned long ago that engaging too quickly often made things worse. Instead, she adjusted the small Christmas keychain hanging from her gear belt, a tiny reindeer her daughter had made in art class 3 years ago. The paint was chipped now, the antlers slightly bent, but she'd carried it through 2 deployments. "I asked you a question, Sergeant," Morrison pressed, his tone sharpening. "The rifle works," Elena replied simply. "Color doesn't affect ballistics." This earned a round of chuckles from the other Marines in the truck. Staff Sergeant Mike Chen, who'd been silent up until now, leaned forward slightly. Elena had heard about Chen during her briefing, 20-year veteran, 2 Purple Hearts, respected by everyone in the unit. His opinion would shape how the others treated her. "You know we're not heading to a toy store, right?" Chen said, his voice carrying the weight of experience. "This is active patrol territory. Taliban's been moving through these valleys for weeks. We need precision, not..." He gestured vaguely at her equipment. "Whatever this is supposed to be." Elena finally turned to meet his gaze. Chen had the weathered face of someone who'd seen too much, eyes that held stories he'd probably never tell. She understood that look, she'd seen it in her own mirror often enough. "Sergeant Rodriguez," she said, keeping her voice level. "Marine sniper, graduated top of my class from Scout Sniper Basic School. I've been carrying this rifle for 3 years. It's never failed me." "Top of your class at a school," Morrison scoffed. "That's training, sweetheart. This is real life. When bullets start flying, you can't hide behind test scores." The truck hit a pothole, jolting everyone inside. Elena used the moment to study the faces around her. 7 Marines total, not counting the driver. All men, all with that particular combination of wariness and machismo that came with combat units. She'd seen it before, would probably see it again. The fact that her rifle was painted in her daughter's favorite color, a promise she'd made before her first deployment, only made things more complicated. Private First Class Tommy Lou, who couldn't have been more than 19, was trying not to stare at the Christmas keychain. Elena caught his eye and saw curiosity there, not malice. That was something, at least. "Where'd you serve before this?" Lou asked quietly, clearly trying to ease the tension. "Afghanistan. 2 tours. Helmand province mostly." "See any action?" This from Morrison again, his skepticism still evident. Elena considered her answer carefully. The truth was complicated, full of moments that still woke her up at night. Instead, she said, "Enough." Chen was studying her more carefully now. "What unit?" 2nd Battalion, 3rd Marines. Forward operating base Dwyer. Something shifted in Chen's expression. FOB Dwyer had been a hotspot during the surge years. Anyone who'd served there had seen real combat, not the quiet patrols and checkpoint duty that some Marines experienced. "You know Gunnery Sergeant Peters?" Chen asked. "Big guy, ugly mustache, from Detroit?" Elena felt a small smile tug at the corner of her mouth. "Gunny Peters saved my life. Twice." The truck fell quiet except for the rumble of the engine and the crunch of tires on gravel. Elena could see the mental calculations happening behind Chen's eyes. Peters was a legend in the Corps, a man whose word carried weight across multiple units and bases. If Peters had worked with her, if he'd vouched for her. "What happened?" Lou asked, leaning forward despite Morrison's disapproving glare. Elena hesitated. The stories from Dwyer weren't the kind you told to prove a point. They were the kind that lived in your chest, heavy and sharp, surfacing at unexpected moments. But something in the young Marine's expression reminded her of herself at that age, eager, untested, looking for heroes in a world that seemed designed to disappoint. "There was an operation," she said finally. "Valley about 50 clicks north of the base. Intel suggested Taliban leadership was using a compound there for meetings. My spotter and I were positioned on overwatch, about 800 meters out. The truck turned onto a rougher road, forcing everyone to grab for handholds. Elena steadied her rifle case and continued. Third platoon was moving through the village when they got hit. IED took out the lead vehicle, and then the whole place lit up with small arms fire. Machine gun nests, RPGs, the works. It was a trap. Morrison had stopped smirking. Even hardened Marines respected well-planned ambushes. They'd all seen what happened when good soldiers walked into kill zones. My job was to identify high-value targets and neutralize threats to the ground team. The Taliban had positioned shooters in 3 different buildings, crossfire pattern designed to pin down our guys in the open. Range was just over 700 meters, with crosswind gusting up to 15 knots. Elena could still picture that day with perfect clarity. The way the heat shimmer made the targets dance in her scope. The sound of automatic weapons fire echoing off the valley walls. The radio chatter filled with urgent calls for support. First shot was center mass on a machine gunner. 7.62 round, clean entry. He dropped, and his position went quiet. Second shot was trickier, sniper on a rooftop, partially concealed behind a low wall. Had to wait for him to expose himself for the shot. When he did, I put one through his upper torso. Lou was hanging on every word now. Even Morrison seemed focused, his earlier hostility replaced by professional interest. The third position was the problem. They had an RPG team that kept changing locations, using the compound's layout to stay mobile. Every time they set up for a shot at our vehicles, they'd be in a different window, different angle. I was tracking them through thermal, but the shots were getting complicated. Chen nodded slowly. He understood the mathematics of long-range shooting, the way wind and elevation and target movement could turn a routine shot into a nightmare scenario. That's when Gunny Peters called in on the radio. Said the ground team was running low on ammo and needed immediate support. The RPG team was setting up for another shot, and if they connected with the remaining vehicle, half the platoon would be stranded with no cover and no way out. The truck slowed as they approached what looked like a checkpoint. Through the dust and heat haze, Elena could see concrete barriers and the familiar sight of Marines in full gear. Their destination was close now, but she continued her story. The shot was just over 800 meters, moving target, wind gusting from 3 different directions because of the valley walls. The RPG gunner was only exposed for maybe 3 seconds at a time, and I had to time it perfectly between his movements and the wind patterns. She paused, remembering the weight of the rifle in her hands, the way her breathing had slowed to almost nothing as she found the rhythm of the moment. I took the shot just as he was lifting the RPG to his shoulder. The bullet caught him center mass and he went down. The RPG fired wild, hit nothing but dirt, and the whole enemy position collapsed after that. Ground team made it out with minimal casualties. The truck came to a complete stop now, engine idling as they waited their turn at the checkpoint. Elena could see the guards checking identification and equipment, their movements practiced and efficient. Gunny Peters put me in for a commendation after that, she finished quietly. Said it was one of the finest displays of marksmanship he'd seen in 23 years of service. Morrison was quiet now, his earlier smugness completely gone. Chen was looking at her with new respect, the kind that came from understanding what 800-meter shots actually meant in combat situations. Why the purple paint? Lou asked, his voice softer now. Elena touched the Christmas keychain again, feeling the familiar weight of memory and promise. My daughter's favorite color. She was 4 when I left for my first deployment. Made me promise to bring her something purple from the war. I couldn't find anything appropriate for a 4-year-old, so She gestured at the rifle case. I brought the war to the purple instead. The truck lurched forward as they approached the checkpoint guards. Elena could see more vehicles ahead, a convoy forming up for what looked like a significant operation. The familiar pre-mission tension was starting to build in her chest, the mixture of anticipation and focused calm that came before serious work. She's 7 now, Elena continued, though she wasn't sure why she felt compelled to share. Still loves purple. Still thinks her mom is some kind of superhero. I'm trying to earn that opinion every day. Chen extended his hand across the truck bed. Staff Sergeant Chen. Welcome to the unit, Sergeant Rodriguez. Elena shook his hand, feeling the calluses and old scars that came with years of military service. Around the truck, the other Marines were looking at her differently now. Not quite acceptance yet, but something closer to professional respect. "So what's the mission?" she asked, settling back against the truck side. Chen's expression grew serious. "Reconnaissance in force. Intel suggests terrorist cell is using a village about 20 clicks from here as a staging area for attacks on supply convoys. We're going in to assess the situation and neutralize any threats." Morrison checked his rifle for the third time since Elena had started her story. Terrain's all mountains and valleys. Lots of elevation changes, wind patterns that change every few hundred meters. Perfect sniper country. "What's the expected range of engagement?" Elena asked. "Could be anywhere from 300 to 1200 meters, depending on positioning," Chen replied. "That's why we specifically requested a sniper for this mission. Command said they were sending us their best available." Elena felt the familiar weight of expectation settling on her shoulders. It was the same feeling she'd had at Dwyer, the knowledge that other Marines' lives might depend on her ability to put bullets exactly where they needed to go. The purple paint job would either become a symbol of precision and professionalism or a reminder of overconfidence and failure. The truck cleared the checkpoint and joined the convoy proper. Elena counted 6 vehicles total, 2 Humvees in front, their transport truck in the middle, 2 more Humvees behind, and a mine-resistant ambush-protected vehicle bringing up the rear. Serious firepower for what was supposed to be a reconnaissance mission. "How long to target?" Elena asked. "About 40 minutes if we don't hit any roadblocks," Chen replied. "Gives you time to get your head in the game." Elena nodded and began her pre-mission routine. She checked her ammunition count, verified her scope settings, and ran through the mental checklist that had kept her alive through dozens of similar operations. The Christmas keychain caught the light as she moved, a small reminder of why precision mattered. Around her, the other Marines were going through their own preparations. Morrison was cleaning his M4 for what had to be the 4th time. Lou was checking and rechecking his radio frequencies. Chen was studying a map, marking elevation points and potential observation positions. The convoy picked up speed as they left the checkpoint behind, moving into terrain that grew increasingly rugged with each passing mile. Elena watched the landscape change through the truck's open tailgate, noting sightlines and potential firing positions out of professional habit. Somewhere ahead lay a village that might or might not contain hostile forces, and her job would be to provide overwatch and precision fire support for whatever they found there. The purple rifle case beside her no longer seemed quite so out of place. It was just another tool now, painted in an unusual color for deeply personal reasons, but capable of the same deadly precision as any other weapon in the convoy. Elena touched the Christmas keychain one more time, then settled back to wait for whatever came next. In the distance, mountains rose like broken teeth against the desert sky, and Elena Rodriguez prepared to prove once again that heroism came in many colors, even purple. The convoy slowed as they approached the designated insertion point, a rocky outcrop that provided cover about 3 kilometers from the target village. Elena Rodriguez felt the familiar pre-combat calm settling over her as she checked her equipment one final time. The purple rifle case lay secure beside her, and the small Christmas keychain caught the afternoon sun filtering through the truck's canvas cover. Staff Sergeant Chen was speaking into his radio headset, coordinating with the other vehicle commanders. Through the static and military jargon, Elena caught fragments of the tactical picture. Aerial reconnaissance had identified several suspicious structures in the village, including what appeared to be weapons caches and possible IED manufacturing sites. The mission had evolved from simple reconnaissance to something more complex. "Listen up," Chen announced as he finished his radio conversation. "Change of plans. UAV spotted movement in the target village about 30 minutes ago. Multiple military-aged males, several carrying weapons. Command wants us to establish overwatch positions and gather intelligence before deciding on next steps." Corporal Morrison checked his ammunition pouches again, a nervous habit Elena had noticed during the convoy. "What kind of numbers are we looking at?" "Unclear. Could be anywhere from a dozen to 50, depending on how many are hiding in buildings. That's why we need good intelligence before we commit to anything." The truck came to a complete stop, and Elena could hear the other vehicles in the convoy doing the same. Through the tailgate, she saw Marines from the other trucks already dismounting, their movements practiced and efficient. The desert air carried the scent of dust and heating metal from the vehicle engines. "Rodriguez," Chen called out. "You're with me and Morrison. We're establishing the primary observation post on Hill 247, about 1,500 meters northeast of the village. Lou, you're staying with the vehicles as radio relay. Elena shouldered her rifle case and grabbed her pack. The weight was familiar and comforting, approximately 45 pounds of equipment that had kept her alive through 2 previous deployments. As she climbed down from the truck, she noticed the other Marines watching her with a mixture of curiosity and professional assessment. Word of her story from the convoy had spread, but stories were just stories. Performance under fire was what really mattered. The terrain between their current position and Hill 247 was typical Afghan countryside, rocky, uneven ground broken by scattered boulders and dried vegetation. The afternoon heat was already making the air shimmer, which would complicate long-range shooting but provided excellent concealment for their movement. Chen took point, moving with the careful steps of someone who'd learned to read the ground for signs of improvised explosive devices. Morrison followed 10 meters back, his rifle ready but pointed safely downward. Elena brought up the rear, her eyes constantly scanning for potential threats and alternative routes. The climb to Hill 247 took nearly 20 minutes, a slow and careful ascent that left all 3 Marines slightly winded but alert. At the top, Elena immediately began surveying the tactical situation. The hill provided excellent observation of the entire village, with clear sight lines to most structures and several potential escape routes. The range to the nearest buildings was approximately 800 meters, well within her effective engagement distance. "This is perfect," Elena murmured as she began setting up her rifle. The purple paint job seemed almost garish against the muted browns and grays of the desert landscape, but she'd learned long ago that camouflage was more about position and movement than color schemes. Chen was already on the radio, establishing communications with the other observation posts. Overwatch 1 is in position. Good visibility of target area. Beginning intelligence gathering now. Elena opened her rifle case with practiced efficiency, her movements smooth and automatic after hundreds of similar setups. The weapon inside was a modified M40A5, chambered for 7.62mm NATO rounds and equipped with a Schmidt and Bender scope capable of precise targeting at ranges exceeding 1,000 meters. The purple paint job was professionally applied, not the amateur spray paint job that many people assumed. She'd paid a custom shop in California to do the work during her leave between deployments. "Why purple, really?" Morrison asked as he established his own position about 5 meters to Elena's left. His question lacked the earlier hostility, replaced by genuine curiosity. Elena adjusted her scope settings for the current range and lighting conditions. "My daughter picked it. She was going through a phase where everything had to be purple: clothes, toys, even her bedroom walls. When I told her I was deploying again, she made me promise to take something purple with me so I'd remember her every day." She pulled out her shooting mat and began arranging her equipment with methodical precision. "I tried to find purple gear, purple accessories, something small that wouldn't interfere with military regulations. But everything was either impractical or not allowed. So I decided to make something purple instead." Morrison was setting up a spotting scope, his movements mirroring Elena's practiced efficiency. "Regiment let you paint your rifle?" "Took some convincing. Had to demonstrate that the paint job didn't affect the weapon's function, durability, or tactical effectiveness. Spent 2 weeks on the range proving that my accuracy was unchanged, that the paint wouldn't chip or fade under normal use, and that it wouldn't compromise camouflage in any meaningful way." Chen finished his radio check and moved to a position between Elena and Morrison, where he could observe the village through binoculars while maintaining communications with the other units. "Movement in Building 7, he announced quietly. 3 individuals, appears to be weapons maintenance." Elena swung her scope to the designated building, a 2-story structure on the village's eastern edge. Through her enhanced optics, she could see men working with what appeared to be AK-47 rifles, cleaning and assembling weapons with practiced efficiency. The range was 847 meters according to her scope's ranging system, a comfortable shot under current conditions. "Confirmed hostile activity," Elena reported. "Multiple weapons visible, including what appears to be a PKM machine gun." Morrison was tracking the same area through his spotting scope. "I count at least 6 rifles, maybe more. These aren't farmers cleaning hunting weapons." Elena made minute adjustments to her scope, compensating for the slight crosswind she could feel against her cheek. The Christmas keychain hung from her deer belt, swaying gently in the desert breeze. She positioned it where she could see it without taking her eye from the scope, a small reminder of what waited for her at home. "This is why I really painted it purple," she said quietly, her voice barely audible over the wind. "It's not just about my daughter's favorite color. It's about making a promise and keeping it, no matter what. Every time I look through the scope, I remember what I'm fighting for." Chen lowered his binoculars and looked at her with new understanding. "How old is she now?" 7. Second grade. She thinks I'm deployed to help people who need protection. I've never told her about the shooting, about what this rifle actually does. To her, it's just mom's purple gun that helps keep bad people away from good people." Elena's voice carried a weight that had nothing to do with the desert heat. "She made me promise to come home safe. Every mission, every shot, every decision I make out here is about keeping that promise. The purple paint reminds me that precision isn't just about hitting targets, it's about making sure I get home to explain why the rifle is purple in the first place." Movement in the village interrupted their conversation. Elena saw approximately a dozen men emerging from various buildings, all carrying weapons and moving with military-style coordination. This wasn't a random gathering of local farmers or militia members. These were trained fighters, possibly foreign insurgents based on their equipment and movement patterns. "We've got a problem," Elena announced. "Multiple hostiles moving toward what looks like a pre-planned assembly point. Equipment suggests experienced fighters, not local militia." Chen was already reaching for his radio. "Overwatch 1 to command. Situation escalating at target location. Recommend immediate support and possible extraction." The radio crackled with static before a voice responded. "Command to Overwatch 1. Maintain observation. QRF is 20 minutes out. Do not engage unless directly threatened." Elena felt her heart rate slow as she entered what she privately called sniper time, a state of heightened awareness where everything else faded except the target picture in her scope. The men in the village were organizing into what appeared to be combat formations, with some taking overwatch positions while others moved equipment between buildings. "They're preparing for something," Morrison observed. "Either they know we're here, or they're getting ready to move operations elsewhere." Elena was tracking individual targets through her scope, noting weapons, movement patterns, and potential threat levels. "I count 18 individuals now. Mix of small arms and crew-served weapons. They've got at least 2 PKM machine guns and what looks like an RPG launcher." The tactical situation was deteriorating rapidly. What had started as a reconnaissance mission was turning into a potential direct confrontation with a well-armed and organized enemy force. Elena's role would be crucial if fighting broke out. Her precision fire could eliminate key threats and provide cover for any Marines caught in the open. "Rodriguez," Chen said quietly, "if this goes sideways, what's your assessment of the tactical picture?" Elena continued scanning through her scope while she answered. "Primary threats are the machine gun positions. They've got good fields of fire that would make movement across open ground extremely dangerous. Secondary concern is the RPG team, which could engage our vehicles if they get line of sight to the convoy." She paused to track a man carrying what appeared to be a sniper rifle of his own. "There's also what looks like a designated marksman setting up in the mosque tower. Range to his position is approximately 920 meters. If he gets established there, he'll have overwatch on our entire area of operations." Morrison was making notes in a small tactical notebook, recording positions and threat assessments for the intelligence report. "What's your engagement priority if we get the green light?" "Machine gunners first, then the RPG team, then the sniper in the tower. After that, targets of opportunity based on immediate threat to friendly forces." Elena's voice was calm and professional, but Chen could see the slight tension in her shoulders that came with preparing for precision work at extended range. The radio crackled again. "All Overwatch positions, this is command. UAV intelligence suggests possible convoy movement from target location toward Highway 7. Maintain observation and report any changes in enemy disposition." Elena adjusted her position slightly, finding a more comfortable shooting stance that she could maintain for extended periods if necessary. The purple rifle looked almost alien against the desert landscape, but her hands moved over it with the confidence of someone who knew every screw, every adjustment, every idiosyncrasy of her weapon. "Movement in Building 3, Morrison announced. Looks like they're loading vehicles with equipment and personnel." Elena swung her scope to the designated building and saw trucks being loaded with wooden crates and armed men. The tactical picture was becoming clearer. This wasn't a permanent enemy position, but rather a staging area for operations elsewhere. The question was whether they'd be allowed to leave peacefully or if the mission would escalate to direct action. "Chen," Elena said quietly, "if they're planning to move that equipment to attack other Marine units or civilian targets, we might not get another opportunity like this. Clear sight lines, known enemy positions, optimal weather conditions for long-range engagement." Chen understood the tactical implications. Letting a well-armed enemy force leave their observation area meant those weapons and fighters would likely be used against other American forces or innocent civilians somewhere else. But engaging without clear authorization could escalate the entire regional situation beyond their unit's ability to control. "Command, this is Overwatch 1, Chen radioed. Enemy force appears to be preparing for movement from current location. Request guidance on rules of engagement." The response came back quickly. "Overwatch 1, you are authorized to engage if enemy force poses imminent threat to friendly forces or civilian populations. Use your best tactical judgment." Elena felt the familiar calm that came before precision work. Her breathing slowed, her heart rate dropped, and the world narrowed to the circle of her rifle scope. Around her, Morrison and Chen were making their own preparations, checking equipment and coordinating with other observation posts. In the distance, the men in the village continued their preparations, unaware that a Marine sniper with a purple rifle and a Christmas keychain was watching their every move through high-powered optics, waiting for the moment when tactical necessity would override diplomatic caution. The afternoon sun was beginning to sink toward the western horizon, and Elena Rodriguez prepared to prove once again that the most important color in combat wasn't camouflage green or desert brown, it was the color of precision, professionalism, and promises kept to 7-year-old daughters who believed their mothers could keep the whole world safe. The situation in the village below changed dramatically as Elena watched through her scope. What had been organized preparation was rapidly becoming urgent evacuation. Men were running between buildings, loading vehicles with desperate efficiency, and establishing hasty defensive positions. Something had spooked them, and Elena suspected their observation posts had been compromised. "Chen, we've got a problem," Elena announced quietly. "They're moving like they know we're here. Either they spotted our positions or someone tipped them off." Staff Sergeant Chen was already reaching for his radio when the first shot rang out across the desert. The crack of a rifle echoed off the surrounding hills, followed immediately by Morrison's sharp intake of breath. "Sniper in the mosque tower," Morrison gasped, pressing his hand against his left shoulder where blood was beginning to seep through his uniform. "Bastard got me." Elena's training kicked in immediately. She swung her scope toward the mosque tower, where she could see muzzle flash from a concealed position about 920 meters away. The enemy sniper had excellent positioning and clearly knew how to use it. "Chen, get Morrison some cover and medical attention," Elena ordered, her voice calm despite the escalating situation. "I need to neutralize that sniper before he picks off anyone else." Chen was already dragging Morrison behind a larger boulder while calling for medical support on his radio. Elena adjusted her scope settings for the increased range and began calculating the complex ballistics required for a precision shot at nearly 1,000 meters. The wind had picked up since they'd established their position, gusting from multiple directions as it channeled through the valley. Elena felt the air currents against her cheek and made minute adjustments to compensate. The enemy sniper was good, he'd found a position that provided excellent concealment while maintaining clear fields of fire on all the American Overwatch positions. Through her scope, Elena could see the barrel of the enemy rifle protruding slightly from a window in the mosque tower. It was a tiny target at this range, made more difficult by the heat shimmer rising from the desert floor and the irregular wind patterns caused by the surrounding terrain. "Rodriguez, can you take the shot?" Chen called out while applying pressure to Morrison's wound. "Working on it," Elena replied, her breathing automatically slowing as she entered the mental state that had made her one of the Marine Corps' most effective snipers. "Need about 30 seconds to get the wind reading right." The enemy sniper fired again, and Elena heard the bullet crack past their position, missing her head by perhaps 18 inches. He was walking his shots closer, using the tried and true method of adjusting fire based on observed impacts. In another shot or two, he'd have their exact range and windage. Elena couldn't afford to wait for perfect conditions. She estimated the wind at approximately 12 knots from the northwest, gusting to perhaps 15. The range was 918 meters according to her scope's laser rangefinder. She made final adjustments to her scope and found her natural point of aim. The Christmas keychain swayed gently in the wind, catching her peripheral vision as she prepared to shoot. For just a moment, Elena thought about her daughter asking why mommy's rifle was purple, and how she'd eventually have to explain that sometimes protecting innocent people required very precise violence against very dangerous people. Breathing, Elena whispered to herself, the single word that centered her mind and body for the shot. In, halfway out, natural respiratory pause, finger pressure building on the trigger. The rifle fired with the sharp crack that Elena knew better than her own heartbeat. Through her scope, she watched the 7.62mm bullet trace its perfect arc across 918 meters of desert air, compensating for wind and gravity and the minute imperfections that could turn precision into near miss. The bullet struck the enemy sniper center mass, and Elena saw him drop backward from the window. The threat was neutralized, but the tactical situation was deteriorating rapidly. Other positions in the village were beginning to return fire, and she could hear automatic weapons opening up from multiple locations. "Sniper down," Elena announced, already scanning for new threats. "But we've got multiple hostiles engaging from the village. This is about to get very interesting." Chen finished bandaging Morrison's shoulder and grabbed his rifle. The wound wasn't life-threatening, but Morrison was effectively out of the fight. "Command, this is Overwatch 1. We're taking effective enemy fire from multiple positions. Request immediate support and possible extract." The radio response was immediate but not encouraging. "Overwatch 1, QRF is still 15 minutes out. Hold your positions and maintain Overwatch. Do not let enemy force escape with equipment." Elena was already tracking new targets through her scope. The men in the village had abandoned any pretense of stealth and were now moving with the urgency of people who knew they were being watched. Several trucks were being loaded with wooden crates that likely contained weapons and explosives destined for attacks on American forces or Afghan civilians. "Chen, I'm seeing what looks like IED components being loaded into those trucks," Elena reported. "If they get that stuff out of here, it's going to end up killing Marines or innocent people somewhere else." A PKM machine gun opened up from a building on the village's western edge, sending a stream of bullets toward their position. Elena could hear the rounds impacting on rocks around them, forcing all three Marines to keep their heads down. "That machine gun is going to pin us here until they finish loading and leave," Chen observed. "Can you get an angle on the gunner?" Elena studied the situation through her scope. The machine gunner was well positioned behind a low wall that provided excellent protection from her current angle. But there was a narrow window of opportunity when he moved the gun between firing positions. "I can get him, but I need him to move first," Elena said. "Morrison, can you draw his attention to your position?" Morrison, despite his wounded shoulder, understood immediately. "Give me 30 seconds, then watch for movement." Elena aligned her crosshairs on the area where she expected the machine gunner to appear. The range was shorter than her previous shot, only about 650 meters, but the target would be moving and only exposed for a few seconds. Morrison fired several rounds from his M4 toward the machine gun position, not expecting to hit anything but hoping to provoke a response. The enemy gunner took the bait, moving his weapon to engage what he perceived as a threat from a different direction. Elena saw him through her scope for perhaps 3 seconds, a bearded man in desert camouflage hefting the heavy machine gun to a new firing position. She led the target slightly, compensating for his movement, and squeezed the trigger. The shot was perfect. The machine gunner dropped immediately, and the deadly stream of automatic fire ceased. Elena was already scanning for new threats before the sound of her shot had finished echoing across the desert. "Machine gun down," she announced. "But they're still loading those trucks. I count 3 vehicles now, all with armed escorts." Chen was coordinating with other observation posts via radio, trying to build a complete picture of the tactical situation. Overwatch 2 reports enemy movement toward the northern exit from the village. Overwatch 3 has multiple vehicles staging near Building 12. Elena realized that the enemy was implementing a coordinated withdrawal plan, using multiple routes and vehicles to ensure that at least some of their personnel and equipment would escape even if the Americans engaged. It was a sophisticated operation that suggested military training and experience. "Chen, they're not just loading random equipment," Elena observed. "Look at how they're organizing the convoy, the security arrangements, the timing. These aren't local farmers playing with military hardware. This is a professional operation." Through her scope, Elena could see men wearing tactical gear that was definitely not standard Taliban issue. Their movements were coordinated, their equipment was well maintained, and their tactics suggested formal military training. This was potentially a foreign terrorist cell, not local insurgents. "Command, this is Overwatch 1, Chen radioed. Enemy force appears to be foreign fighters with sophisticated equipment and training. Recommend immediate engagement to prevent escape with weapons and explosives." The radio response came back with the authorization Elena had been waiting for. "All Overwatch positions, you are cleared to engage targets of opportunity. Priority is preventing escape of personnel and equipment." Elena felt the familiar calm settle over her as she transitioned from observation to active engagement. Through her scope, she could see approximately 20 enemy fighters organizing into convoy formation. Her job was to create enough disruption to prevent their escape while keeping her own unit safe until reinforcements arrived. "Morrison, can you still operate your radio with that shoulder?" Elena asked. Morrison tested his range of motion and nodded grimly. "I can manage communications. Arms not broken, just bleeding." "Good. I need you calling out targets and adjusting fire. Chen, you coordinate with other positions and make sure nobody gets surprised by flanking movements." Elena selected her first target, a man carrying what appeared to be an RPG launcher toward the lead truck. Range was 743 meters, moderate crosswind from the west, target moving at approximately walking speed. She led him slightly and fired. The man with the RPG dropped immediately, his weapon clattering across the ground. Around the village, other fighters began taking cover as they realized they were under accurate sniper fire from an unknown position. "RPG threat neutralized," Elena announced, already searching for her next target. Tracking individual carrying what appears to be command radio near Building 5. The man with the radio was clearly trying to coordinate the evacuation, speaking rapidly into a handheld device while gesturing toward different vehicles. Elena's second shot caught him center mass, eliminating what was likely the field commander for the entire operation. "Command element down," Elena reported. "Enemy organization is starting to break down." Without central coordination, the enemy fighters were making individual decisions about whether to continue loading equipment or seek cover from the sniper fire. Some were returning fire toward the hills, but, without knowing Elena's exact position, their shots were ineffective. Elena continued her methodical engagement, selecting targets based on threat level and tactical importance. A man loading wooden crates that likely contained explosives. An enemy fighter setting up another machine gun. Someone attempting to restart the stalled evacuation. Each shot was precisely calculated and expertly delivered. The purple rifle that had drawn ridicule and skepticism was proving its worth in the most demanding circumstances possible: combat against trained enemies at extended range under deteriorating tactical conditions. "Elena," Morrison called out, using her first name in the intensity of combat. "You're disrupting their whole operation. They can't organize an effective withdrawal as long as you keep picking off their leadership and heavy weapons teams." Through her scope, Elena could see the enemy force fragmenting. Some were attempting to leave on foot, others were still trying to load vehicles, and a few were setting up defensive positions to try to locate and suppress her position. The coordinated military operation was rapidly becoming a disorganized retreat. "Chen, what's the ETA on that QRF?" Elena asked while tracking another target. 8 minutes, Chen replied. "Think you can keep them pinned down that long?" Elena touched the Christmas keychain hanging from her belt, feeling the small weight that represented everything she was fighting for. "Count on it," she said, and fired again. The sound of approaching helicopters was barely audible over the sporadic gunfire echoing through the valley, but Elena Rodriguez could feel the familiar vibration in the ground that meant the quick reaction force was finally approaching. She'd been engaging targets for nearly 20 minutes now, and the enemy force below had been reduced from an organized military operation to scattered groups of fighters desperately seeking escape routes. "QRF is 2 minutes out," Staff Sergeant Chen announced, lowering his radio. "Command wants you to keep the pressure on until they can establish a perimeter around the village." Elena adjusted her position slightly, finding a more comfortable shooting stance for what might be the final phase of the engagement. Her purple rifle had performed flawlessly through 17 precision shots, each one carefully calculated and expertly delivered. The Christmas keychain hanging from her gear belt caught the afternoon sunlight as she moved, a small reminder of the 7-year-old girl who believed her mother could protect the whole world. Through her scope, Elena could see the remaining enemy fighters had split into 3 distinct groups. One was attempting to escape on foot toward the northern mountains, carrying small arms but leaving behind the heavy weapons and explosives that had been their primary objective. A second group was barricaded inside a compound on the village's eastern edge, apparently preparing for a final standoff. The third group was still trying to salvage equipment from the failed evacuation, loading whatever they could carry into a single remaining truck.
"Morrison, how's that shoulder holding up?" Elena asked without taking her eye from the scope.
Corporal Morrison tested his range of motion again, wincing slightly as he moved his wounded arm.
"Still functional. Bleeding stopped, and I can still operate the radio and spot targets."
"That sniper rifle of yours saved my life when you took out that tower shooter."
Elena tracked a man carrying what appeared to be a mortar tube toward the remaining truck.
Range was approximately 680 meters, with light wind from the southwest. She led the target slightly and fired, watching through her scope as the man dropped and the mortar tube clattered onto the ground. "Heavy weapons team neutralized," Elena announced. "They're down to small arms now, and most of those are heading for the hills." The tactical situation had changed dramatically since the engagement began. What started as an intelligence-gathering mission had evolved into a successful interdiction of a major terrorist operation. The weapons and explosives that would have been used against American forces and Afghan civilians were now scattered across the village under American control, and the foreign fighters who had been coordinating attacks in the region were either dead, wounded, or fleeing.
Chen was receiving updates from the other observation posts via radio. Overwatch 2 reports enemy foot movement toward grid 385792.
Overwatch 3 has eyes on the truck attempting to leave through the southern exit. Elena swung her scope toward the southern exit and quickly located the truck Chen was referring to. It was a small pickup loaded with wooden crates and approximately 6 armed men. The vehicle was moving slowly, trying to navigate around obstacles and debris while maintaining security, but it was still within her effective engagement range.
"I have the truck," Elena confirmed. "Range is about 850 meters. Do you want me to disable the vehicle or engage the personnel?" "Command says stop that truck by any means necessary," Chen replied.
"Those crates probably contain enough explosives to kill dozens of Marines or civilians." Elena studied the target through her scope, calculating the ballistics for a shot that would disable the vehicle without causing a catastrophic explosion that might kill everyone in the area. The truck's engine block would be the ideal target, large enough to ensure a hit at this range, and likely to stop the vehicle without detonating any explosives in the cargo area. She adjusted her scope for the extended range and took careful aim at the front of the truck, where the engine would be located behind the grille and radiator. The vehicle was moving slowly but steadily, requiring her to lead the target and time her shot perfectly. Elena's breathing slowed as she entered the focused state that had made her one of the Corps' most effective snipers. The world narrowed to the crosshairs in her scope, the feel of the rifle against her shoulder, and the mathematical precision required to put a bullet exactly where it needed to go. The shot was perfect. Elena watched her bullet punch through the truck's engine block in a spray of metal and steam. The vehicle immediately began losing power, coasting to a stop as smoke poured from under the hood. The men inside began abandoning the disabled truck, grabbing what equipment they could carry and heading for cover. "Truck disabled," Elena reported. "Personnel are dismounting and attempting escape on foot, but they're leaving the heavy equipment behind." The sound of helicopters was much louder now, and Elena could see the first aircraft approaching from the southeast. 2 AH-64 Apache attack helicopters were providing security, while a pair of UH-60 Black Hawks carried the Marines who would secure the village and process the captured equipment. "That's some impressive shooting, Rodriguez," Morrison said with genuine respect. "I counted at least 20 precision shots in the last half hour, all at ranges over 600 meters. That purple rifle of yours is starting to look pretty intimidating." Elena allowed herself a small smile while continuing to scan for threats through her scope. "It's not about the color or the sentimental value. It's about making every shot count when it matters. My daughter made me promise to come home safe, and the only way to keep that promise is to be better than everyone who's trying to stop me." Chen was coordinating the final phase of the operation via radio, ensuring that the incoming Marines would have current intelligence about enemy positions and the locations of captured equipment.
"Command, this is Overwatch 1. Primary threats neutralized, heavy weapons secured. Village is clear for ground element insertion."
The helicopters were circling the village now, their door gunners providing additional security while the pilots selected landing zones.
Elena could see the enemy fighters who had escaped on foot were already several hundred meters away, climbing into the mountains where helicopters couldn't easily follow.
The immediate threat had been eliminated, and the strategic objective, preventing the weapons and explosives from reaching other terrorist cells, had been accomplished. Elena, Chen said quietly, using her first name with the same respect Morrison had shown.
I owe you an apology.
When I first saw that purple rifle, I thought it was some kind of joke, maybe an attention-seeking stunt by someone who didn't understand how serious this work is. Elena finally took her eye away from the scope and looked at Chen directly.
And, now? Now I understand that the most dangerous sniper in this valley happens to carry a purple rifle. The color doesn't matter. The person behind the weapon is what counts.
Elena began the process of securing her rifle and preparing for movement back to the convoy. The engagement was over, but there would be debriefings, reports to write, and equipment to account for. The purple paint job that had drawn skepticism and ridicule was now part of a successful combat operation that had likely saved dozens of lives. The truth is, Elena said while carefully packing her equipment, I almost had it repainted standard colors before this deployment. I was tired of the comments, the assumptions, the way people looked at it and automatically assumed I wasn't serious about my job. Morrison was gathering his own gear, moving carefully to avoid aggravating his wounded shoulder.
What changed your mind?
Elena touched the Christmas keychain one more time before securing it inside her pack.
My daughter asked me if I was going to take the purple rifle with me to protect people.
When I told her I was thinking about painting it green like everyone else's, she got this worried look on her face.
The Black Hawks were landing now, and Elena could see Marines dismounting and beginning to secure the village perimeter.
The operation was transitioning from combat to consolidation, and her role as a sniper was largely complete. She asked me if the rifle would still work right if it wasn't purple, Elena continued. And I realized that in her 7-year-old mind, the purple wasn't just decoration, it was part of what made the rifle special, part of what made it work the way it was supposed to. Chen was stowing his own equipment and preparing for the movement back to the convoy vehicles. Kids have a way of cutting through the complicated stuff and getting to what really matters.
She was right, Elena said, shouldering her pack and preparing for the hike back down the hill.
The rifle works perfectly, and it's purple because that matters to someone who loves me.
Every time I looked through that scope today, I remembered what I was fighting for.
Not military objectives or tactical advantages, but keeping promises to people who believe I can keep them safe. The 3 Marines began their descent from Hill 247, leaving behind a battlefield where precision and professionalism had triumphed over numerical superiority and tactical surprise. The purple rifle that had drawn mockery and skepticism had proven its worth in the most demanding circumstances possible, combat against trained enemies at extended range under deteriorating conditions.
Rodriguez, Shin said as they approached the convoy vehicles, I'm putting you in for a commendation for today's action.
Outstanding marksmanship under fire, tactical awareness, and mission accomplishment under adverse conditions.
Elena felt a warmth that had nothing to do with the desert heat.
Recognition from fellow Marines meant more than civilian awards or newspaper headlines. It meant acceptance into the brotherhood of warriors who had proven themselves when everything was on the line.
I appreciate that, Staff Sergeant.
But the real reward is getting to go home and tell my daughter about the purple rifle that helped protect good people from bad people.
She's going to want to know every detail.
Morrison climbed into the transport truck with Elena's assistance, his wounded shoulder making movement difficult.
What are you going to tell her about today?
Elena secured her rifle case in the truck and settled onto the bench seat. The familiar weight of her equipment and the satisfaction of a successful mission were already being replaced by thoughts of home, of a 7-year-old girl who would want to hear stories about adventure and heroism. I'm going to tell her that sometimes keeping promises requires doing difficult things far from home. And that the purple rifle worked perfectly, just like she knew it would. The convoy began moving back toward base as the sun set over the Afghan mountains, carrying Marines who had learned that heroism came in many forms, including a sniper with a purple rifle and a Christmas keychain who had proven that the most important battles were fought not for glory or recognition, but for the people who believed you would always find a way to come home safe. In the distance, helicopters continued their security patrols over a village where wooden crates filled with death had been replaced by the quiet satisfaction of promises kept and missions accomplished. And Elena Rodriguez began planning how to explain to a 7-year-old girl that her mother's purple rifle had once again helped make the world a little bit safer for people who couldn't protect themselves.